Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are just 5 minutes too late, but it's time to start. Welcome to this panel discussion, presentation, discussion with you as audience on a topic which is really hot. When we planned it, we didn't think it would be so hot that computer science not as such only matters, but it can directly influence electoral campaigns and outcomes, even if there's still an open discussion how much it was influenced by computer science or, let's say, algorithms we have developed. So the issue is really what is the role we as computer scientists play in the coming years. Also, what is our relationship to other sciences? What is our role as a university? We have agreed that we will introduce the panelists afterwards, and we start now, and by special welcome to our rector, Professor Sabine Seidler, who will give a short introduction.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, it's my pleasure to introduce the panel discussion, Why Computer Science Matters, a Janus-faced role in the 21st century. A sensational title. We will see how the discussion fulfills our expectations. We are part of a fundamental change process which is driven by the possibilities of computer science. Janus, Roman god of the beginning and the end, symbolizes duality in the eternal laws. Similarly, opportunities and risks of digitization lie strong together, no matter what social level is considered. We are convinced that we as university have to take into account both sides, not only in our scientific work, but also in technology transfer, in knowledge transfer, and so on. Activities as the current broaden our mind and make us aware for our scientific work. I wish us an exciting discussion.
Thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to invite Carlo Ghezzi and to introduce him. He will do a kind of a kick-off speech of 15-20 minutes. Carlo is a very well-known scientist in computer science, software engineering, I don't count or tell the numerous grants you have received. Just he was professor at Politecnico di Milano. He was also vice rector for research, I have learned, just 10 minutes ago. So he was also directing the research of one of our biggest competitor. And he did it successfully because they're very well positioned. And he was president of Informatics Europe, somehow putting forward the informatics agenda at the European landscape.
Thank you very much. Don't expect too much. So basically what I want to do is to be a facilitator for the discussion that is going to happen here, and give you some initial thoughts of, well, first of all, why computer science matters, and this idea that I found, quite compelling, that computer science has this role of being like, Janus with two faces, and usually when the two faces mean, something that is positive and something that is potentially negative. So in the case of computer science, the discussion is, computer science is something that you can see as a problem solver, so solving problems in different areas. And the other side of Janus is, creating new problems. So you're solving problems and you're creating others. So what I would try to do is to dig a little bit into this, meaning that I expect the panel to come out with other cases in which this dual role actually comes out very clearly. So I'm not aiming at any form of completeness in what I'm saying here. But before doing this, why computer science matters, I think that it may help a little bit of historical look back and where everything begins. Of course, computing is older than that. But the first case of an existing computing facility, is after the war, 1946, ENIAC 4, and this is how the thing looked like at the time. Of course, then there was a huge progress in the science and technology behind computing until 36 years after that. Time magazine, every year they come out with this, the year. What has been the major achievement or the major figure that you can associate to the year? And in 1982, that became the personal computer. To mark the fact that there was, that computing had become something related with the life of people. And actually you see some kind of stylized person in front of the computer. And this is the cover, 36 years after the ENIAC 4 in 1946. And from then on, I think that there was a spectacular growth. So why informatics matters? Informatics matters because our society relies on every step on informatics. I mean, there is nothing in the society in which we live that gives us the wealth in the world that makes our life possible today, that can go on, that can work without informatics. The way we communicate, phones, they're basically computing devices. Commerce, production, transport, cars, logistics, enterprise management, content creation, travel, entertainment, healthcare, education, and access to information and knowledge at all levels, government, politics. There's no sector, and there's a ... of course. I mean, there's no sector that actually has not been profoundly reshaped or affected by informatics. And what is interesting on the one side is that most people don't realize because of the invisibility of the technology that makes all this possible, which is one of the problems that we may have, and I will maybe say something about that. So in 36, after 36 years, we had the personal computer, and then for many years, this is where we are now. But if you take another, and of course, we can say that no other science has done the same in terms of penetration into everything. I don't see any other science that you can point out that has done the same. So this is really, why informatics matters. And to me, it is still a surprise that if you talk to people, most of the people don't realize exactly, this. But, then, after 34 years, there was another cover of after this one, another cover of the Time magazine, which, the person of the year, person, that's interesting, is knowing the person instead of saying the man, saying the person, is a kind of ironical, I guess. So the person of the year, and not the man of the year, is Donald Trump. And why does, and the president of the divided States of America, that's another piece of interesting text attached to this. But, what is interesting here is that, informatics has played a role in this. Has played a role because of the use of social media, has played a role because there's this suspect that, hackers from Russia have been able to hack. So there's, and this is, if you want, already the other side of Janus, right? So here again, hacking demonstrates one thing. The fact that there is this suspect that there was possible hacking. Well, it shows something very serious. There has been this tremendous growth and penetration in all sectors, as I said before. Nothing would work without. But at the same time, it shows that there is the infrastructure is still fragile. It reveals, some kind of fragility of the infrastructure. So you're open, you're supporting such, a set of fundamental functionalities, but at the same time, the infrastructure is fragile. It's open to hacking. So hackers from Russia can hack and can potentially influence elections in the United States. And of course, this shows that there's a need for further research, for further activities to make the infrastructures less fragile, resilient, as we say, to problems of this kind. Other side, social media. The use of social media that Donald Trump has made has been, according to what you read in the political analysts, has been one of the factors that led to success. So the use of social media, the fact that people, take for truth, for example, unproven statements, bold, unproven statements. So we are providing facilities that share, very easily, this kind of knowledge, but without having a way to assess, what is the credibility. And so this is very open to every possible manipulation. Again, I believe that this raises a very important problem that we are still not educating, people to live in this cyber world, understand, what is truth and what is just, information that you can find. What is the difference between something that is confirmed by some kind of assessment and something that is simply found there. So need for ethical principles, education. So these are, again, there are two phases driven by this. And we can go over and over and over. I think that, one of the difficulties here is that, again, the fact that, informatics is everywhere, it is very complex and it is critical on one side. But on the other side, the complexity is not visible. So this is, again, I mean, two faces. All this complexity of these systems is not visible. Where do you see the complexity of the software that is supporting, these functionalities? Invisibility is making things hard, and the fact that so people don't understand that what people see, is the surface, and the surface looks trivial. So again, two faces. It's everywhere. It's complex. It's critical, but it is invisible, and what you see is trivial. So you don't appreciate, the difficulty that is there. What you see is, what you see on the phone. Everybody, even your grandmother, can use the phone and use the functionalities. But what makes it like this? This you don't see. Another case of this duality is disciplinary versus interdisciplinary. Yeah, this is very important. On the one side, informatics, I strongly believe this, is a science and a technology. And there's a lot of need for research in making this science and technology advance. The fragility of the infrastructure that I mentioned before is a very good example. It is still fragile. But at the same time, informatics is permeating all other sectors. I mean, there is no other sector in which it didn't penetrate. So it becomes an interdisciplinary tool in other areas for advances in other areas. And again, here the difficulty is that, for example, when you're speaking about interdisciplinarity, people tend to dismiss sometimes informatics as a pure way of doing things. The real problem is problem X. Informatics is just helping, making things easier. It's just, a tool that you use. But actually, I believe that there's both roles, and the interdisciplinarity by itself is very difficult. So informatics has its own problems, and when it becomes interdisciplinary, there are problems, and informatics is not just a facilitator in those areas, but it's a way of rethinking the problems in these areas. So I think one of the important consequences of this initial considerations is that we, as computer scientists, given this word, this situation, we really need to engage. The problems are so widespread that we cannot just focus on our own field of interest. We need to engage. We need to promote culture. We need to promote the fact that there is a science of informatics, and we need to be engaged in a discussion of how informatics actually reshapes also other sciences. What are these sciences in the 21st century? Due to the fact that we are, mixing, informatics with these disciplines. And this is an important discussion that, we have to participate in. And from the others, from the people from the other disciplines, we need to ask that they don't see informatics just as a tool to solve problems, but as a way of rethinking their own discipline. The other, fundamental issue here is that we need to promote education. Because of informatics is such a pervasive science, it is a shame that still in most educational programs in all the countries, informatics is not taught to even young, from young children on. It is a discipline that is as important as physics, as chemistry, as mathematics, and with the principles of the discipline that is that is the engine of the society in which the people live. We also have to teach how to behave in a world that is a cyber world, as I mentioned before. What it means, to share information, to share knowledge with others. How do you trust what you see? How do you behave ethically in the use of the devices that you interact with every day in your life? So we need to participate in really developing the concepts of ethics in the new society that is built through informatics. And the ethical principles have to become, common principles of the citizens of the future. So this is a kind of debate and a kind of engagement in which we need to participate. I'm talking about, when I say we need, I'm talking, of course, about us from computer science. It is not something that we can delegate to others. Of course, we need others. It's not something that, we can do ourselves. We need to interact, with all other disciplines, with philosophy, with ethics, with sociology, with social sciences in general. When we're talking about informatics in other sciences, with other scientists. But we need to be there as well. Just to conclude, I believe that, the two faces of Janus will continue to stay with us. And this is, in a sense, it is intrinsic in science. You're solving problems and you're generating problems. There's no way out of this. Every time you are solving something, you're generating new ones. But what is amplified here is the fact that we are touching on every area of our life, every subject. So, due to the pervasive nature of this, this will be even more true in the case of informatics. So that's my kickoff of the discussion, and I hope that.
Hello, also from my side. My name is Tanja Draxler. I'm physicist and science editor with the Austrian newspaper Der Standard. And it's my pleasure to moderate now 1 hour of discussion. Maybe I would like to welcome the panel already. Please come to the stage. So before introducing the panel to you, let me just briefly take a short excursus to ancient Roman mythology. So the Romans thought of themselves as highly religious and attributed their success in maintaining good relations with the gods. Having integrated Greek gods, it should not surprise us that the list of Roman gods is rather longish. And one among the dozens of Roman gods was Janus or Janus, being the god of beginnings and endings, and also the god of transitions, doors and gates. Janus was often depicted with 2 faces, as you've already seen. And with his two-faced vision, Janus looked into the past and into the future at the same time. And speaking literally, the Janus-faced expresses a role of polarities and contrasts, and this is which brings us right into the center of our discussion today, the role of computer science in today's society. As we've already heard, computer science has evolved to the key science of the 21st century. And by its radical expansion, it triggers both hopes and fears. The intention of this discussion shall now be to reflect on the societal role of computer science and to establish the position of the universities in this context. So with that, I would like to introduce the panel to you. We have a very rich panel to you, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. You've already been introduced to Carlo Ghezzi. Thank you so much for your rich introductory remarks. I think that gives us a lot of questions, topics for the discussion now. So let me move to Gerti Kappel, who is sitting right next to you. Gerti Kappel is professor for business informatics at the Institute of Software Technology and Interactive Systems at this university here. She received her master's and PhD degrees in computer science and business informatics from the University of Vienna and from TU Wien. Her research interests involve model engineering, process engineering, as well as applications to workflow management and smart production environments. I hope that is right. And Kappel also worked as a pioneer of the successful initiative Women in Technology at TU Wien. Welcome. Next to you, Hans Ackermans. He's professor of business informatics at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. His research focuses on knowledge engineering and management, as well as information and computer technology for development. Ackermans is the founding director of the Interdisciplinary Network Institute, in which 300 researchers investigate the networked connected world in all its technological, social, economic, etc. facets. And currently he directs the research and education program of the Web Alliance for Regreening in Africa. And as I've heard, the mission of this alliance is to support farmer-led regreening activities, specifically by enhancing information, communication, and knowledge sharing for rural development. Maybe you can tell us more about that in the discussion. I think that would be a great benefit. Welcome. Next to you, Laura Kovac. She's professor also at this university here and associate professor at the Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. Her research interests involve formal system software analysis and verification, and she received her habilitation in computer science at TU Wien and was awarded several research grants, which is probably true for all of you, of course, and fellowships such as the Wallenberg Academy Fellowship and an ERC starting grant. Welcome. Next to me, Thomas Henzinger. President of the Institute of Science and Technology, Austria. He holds degrees in computer science from the Johannes Kepler Universität Linz and the University of Delaware, as well as a PhD from Stanford University. His research interest focuses on modern systems theory, algorithms, and tools for the design and verification of reliable software, hardware, and embedded systems. Hensinger was awarded with the Wittgenstein Award of the Austrian Science Fund and an ERC Advanced Grant, among others. Welcome. So let us go into the discussion. In the first round, I would like to touch upon the role of computer science in our today's society. Maybe let me start with Hans Ackermann's. Given your activity in the fast-growing field of practice and study of how information and communication technologies influence and contribute to social and economic development, how does computer science matter in your perspective?
Well, I'll give you some view, a personal view on this. I think, computer science is a very young science. However, if you really think about its role in society, it's better to go back to the Enlightenment period, say the 17th century. Much of science as we know it has its root in the Enlightenment period, the new knowledge. And a lot of disciplines slowly emerged there. In that time, there was no idea of physics and chemistry, but Newton was a natural philosopher and spent most of his time as an alchemist. So this was very broad, but there was a strong strive for new knowledge, and that had all kinds of both positive and also negative effects. World travel was at that time a big thing, but colonialism also. A next step, I think important, is the Industrial Revolution. So the steam engine is a symbol of the industrialization, the automation, you might say, of manual labor. And the steam engine is the symbol, and at that time, especially physics and chemistry emerged as disciplines in very much the same way as we know them now. What you might say of the past decades, and that relates to the computer stuff, computer science has emerged as a science. The computer is a symbol of the automation of intellectual labor of the service industries. That you see, for example, with e-business and so on and so on. And computer science is actually the science that relates to that type of technology. That's why it is so pervasive. And then, as Carlo already said, it has all kinds of effects, some predicted, some wanted, some unwanted. So that's why I would say the Enlightenment project is not yet over, but we have to re-establish, redefine human rights, civil rights, the notion of privacy. So this is not done once and for all, but has to be rethought, and that's a part of the role of computer science in today's society.
Thank you very much. Thomas Hensinger, beside the hopes computer science triggers, it also triggers vast fears. How would you touch upon this two-faced role of computer science today?
I think it's actually a bit symptomatic that we're talking here about computer science, about hopes and fears, in a situation where one might actually consider this, kind of as an outsider, kind of a very blissful country, where in 2016 one has a discussion why computer science matters. I might imagine one might have had such a discussion in 1985 Or one might discuss in 2016, why do the classics still matter? I mean, I don't mean this facetiously. I mean, if we look at job statistics, it's literally 80 to 90% of all jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs in Europe and in the United States require computer science skills. If you look at enrollment statistics at American universities these days and would translate them into faculty statistics, it means a university like this one, 60% of its professors should be computer scientists. And the question should, the rector is here, right? The question should, well, the question should be is, do you want to have one computer science department that large? That's probably a political problem. Or do you want to have computer scientists in every single one department? I mean, that is the real questions at the moment in front of us. We're in Austria. I mean, Carlo made the point very nicely, but I think about computer science education, but I think in Austria we are especially behind, and that's the troubling thing. The troubling thing is not the dangers of computer science. The troubling thing is that we educating pupils and students without any chance of them and, you know, getting a grasp of what computer science is and what the potential dangers are. And that is the real problem we should be addressing here. And I mean, and we are falling behind as we speak. I mean, many other countries have huge initiatives. I mean, Obama's computer science for all. England has a computer science from 5th grade for started in 2013, as I know. And that is what we really should be talking about. I don't hear anybody in Austria talking about that kind of topic. And that would really be much more important at this point.
Do you have some concrete recommendations what should be done in Austria in order to catch up with other countries in that respect?
Yes, completely change the curriculum from kindergarten on.
Thank you.
We could.
Not only in Austria.
Gerti Kappel, their tradition and ability of critical discourse appears to prepare universities to initiate reflections on the societal role of computer science. What is the position of the universities in this context, in your view?
I hope we are coming up to the expectations here. You know, a couple of weeks ago we had Bruno Buchberger here at the TU Wien talking about his book about mathematics, management and meditation. And what I really have learned from him is that he defined, we also discussed about the role of universities, and he said what really makes the universities so special is that they are kind of one of the few institutions which can reflect on the things they are doing, like a self-reflection mechanism. At the same time, they also establish and develop not only the new ideas, but also the people who are again fed into the university. So it's the only institution which kind of self-nutrites its own people and develop its own people. And I think this makes the universities so special, that we have really this, starting with the Enlightenment in the 17th centuries, that we have, or we should further have this reflection mechanism. And we have discussed this over the last 2 days also. In fact, what we try, at least at the Faculty of Computer Science at the TU Wien, since the mid-80s, that we not only provide the best theoretical and technical underpinnings of computer science, but we also try to integrate this reflection, this critical reflection mechanism also in our curricula.
Laura Kovac, may I also ask you to share some of your hopes and expectations concerning the social role of computer science and in which ways you think the discipline should or could evolve?
So it's a bit strange because I'm a bit a newcomer and like telling you my views, how I see the role of computer science. Some of you have been my professors, so it's a bit awkward situation. But I fully agree with what Tom actually and also Carlo said. So it's really, I think, what very specific or very, very nice thing of computer science that it both creates and also solves problems. And it's like an eternal loop. Whenever you solve something, then you immediately create new challenges. And it's changing at a very fast pace, which means like if whatever we solved, let's say 6 months ago, or whatever results we have in 6 months ago, this might not be actual now. And I think it's very important that also our curriculum and our education reflects it. So both on basic education, so basic foundations of computer science taught at university, and also applications of computer science. And I agree that it should be changed from kindergarten on. It would be ideal to have computer science taught at elementary schools. But I also believe that also the curriculum at university should be changed to focus not just on applications of computer science or what are the dangers or what are the new trends in computer science, but not to neglect that behind all these new trends there are foundations. And the foundations should be well understood by every computer scientist educated at the university.
Thank you. Carlo Ghezzi, I'd like to come back to some spotlights you had in your introduction concerning especially the fears in context with computer science. You have mentioned social media in context with that, postings, insulting postings on the internet. You've mentioned Trump, etc., the post-factual society. So there were quite some topics in the last time where the fears rather dominated the discourse around computer science. How do you think can we face this situation?
You know, what I believe that we need to shape education. You know, I really am a strong believer in this. You know, education since the very beginning, taking into account that we live in a different world today. And what we teach still is based on a view of society that is not there today. Which means that you know, for example, the young kids, they only see the most stupid surface of informatics. They're not, if they learn, they're trained sometimes to use, you know, mechanically the tools, but first without understanding the conceptual part, which is, you know, the so-called computational thinking that is behind this, which is the value. And on the other side, we don't teach them not only how to use the technology, but how to use the technology in a proper way, in an ethical way. So I still build. So this is why we have, you know, cyber, you know, you call it cyber mobbing. Yes, you know, this is why you see the use of media without understanding, you know, what they find. You know, for example, the young people, they search whatever they find. They take it for true. So explaining what is behind this, you know, I think these are the fundamentals of education, you know, and if we fail this, you know, we are just failing with the next generation of people, which is tragic. So, so if you want to make sure that the simplified use of media that led to, you know, for example, Trump to communicate with, you have to educate people. There's no way out of this.
So there is obviously a lot that can be done in school education, in kindergarten. Is there something we can do also from within the universities, you think?
Well, there's again, the experiences have been cited from other countries. I'm not familiar with the Obama program, but I know that it's in place. But I know a little bit of the UK, and this is an incredibly successful effort, and again something that was coming bottom up, so also involving citizens. So again, it's a wonderful initiative. But eventually this is going to change, the way people are educated. And, we can use, students, we can be creative because, some people say, well, we don't have the teachers. How can you do it? But, I believe that we can find creative ways of doing this, and doing this would be much better than not doing anything and waiting until you form the new teachers, which will take 20 years and blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this first round. Before moving on, I would like to give you, the audience, a first chance to raise your questions. Are there already any questions from the audience?
I have a question for Tom Henzinger. You argue that the most important problem and the most important issue is the education of young students in schools. Does this imply that issues like privacy or hate speech in the internet is less important and that we shouldn't take care of that? Or do you also see the danger? Because the topic of this panel discussion is this Janus head, and what you are talking about is just the problem of education, so you don't address this other part of the Janus head, the negative part and the negative implications computer science could have. Do you mean that education is the only problem, but do you also see...
I am 100% convinced that education in the end is the only solution to address... I mean, you cannot start talking about privacy and all these other issues without a basic education in computer science. Take math. I mean, nobody really needs to be able to calculate anymore these days, right? We all have our cell phones. We can do big any calculation with the computer, with the cell phone, whatever. Nonetheless, nobody questions that it's important to teach math from first grade on because it gives a basic understanding what in principle could be done and what in principle is possible and what is the underlying mechanism, and it gives a basic way of educating rational citizens that can at least estimate whether an answer is plausible or right. In the same way you have to teach, and I say this now explicitly because I know that many people might not agree with this, but hard computer science skills like coding from elementary school on, in order to have citizens grow up that you can teach about the dangers and issues that involve privacy and things. Otherwise, it's completely impossible to even sort of get an understanding of what is a real issue and what is not an issue, and what is possible and what is not possible. And otherwise, you have all these irrational fears out there. Some of them real, but some of them completely irrational. And we need, I mean, for example, when I'm always asked, well, if you want to teach computer science, something needs to go, right? You cannot just overload it. It's quite right, but we have a curriculum that's basically 100 years old. And how about like starting with throwing out something like Latin? Well, then here, Latin is great for logical thinking. Why not teach logical thinking instead? Straight, right? That's computer science. I'm absolutely convinced that this is the fundamental issue here. We cannot have a rational society, and unfortunately, we see all these signs of going the way of a completely irrational society without teaching computer science, and rationality is a big part of it from very, very small kids on.
Yeah, may I make a remark? Isn't the concept of critical discourse. I think that is central here. What you want to do in education, and certainly in academic education or in any field, clearly you have matters of substance that you want to teach to professionals and scientists. And in computer science, it's computer science, and in, let's say, sociology, it's social science kind of stuff. And you need that in order to come to some kind of informed judgment of things. But we do have generally meta-level goals that are typically in academic educations called academic skills and academic attitude, and they relate very much to the capability of critical thinking, civilized conversation, argument to come to shared conclusions. And actually the whole scientific research world attempts to be a model of precisely that. What is truth? What works well? What works? We can disagree about it, but then you have to bring arguments to the table that convince other people. And to take privacy, that's a very contested kind of thing. Clearly, you need some kind of knowledge, substantial knowledge on how it works in a digital world. But for the rest, it's a kind of critical discourse, discussion. What are the pros? What are the cons? Who bears the negative implications, the positive implications, and come to some kind of balance. And I think this critical discourse element is key to any education, including the computer science one, and is also key in forming and maintaining a civilized society.
Thank you, Professor Ackermann, for this corrective statement, because I wanted also to ask Tom Hensinger. Here I am. I'm fully with you that we should maybe reorganize the curricula from kindergarten onwards, but I may be a bit provocative. I would do it maybe the other way around. Because if you focus too much on computer science, this will become a feedback cycle and the kids will only deal with computer science. I learned ancient Greek, for instance. I'm a computer science professor as well, a colleague of your wife, by the way. I learned ancient Greek because at that time I thought I will never ever in my life have the chance to do that. And this was true. I could learn any other language by practice then. So if you're just throwing these things away, we will exactly end up in a situation where the young generation only thinks algorithmically and will not be able to have any rational discourse, as mentioned by Professor Ackermann. I would argue the other way around. We have to teach them how to think. Maybe you call that computer science. Then we are on one side. But we have to go much more on the basic way to how discussions have to be performed, instead of dealing, because coding they will learn in any case somehow during their life. They will never learn ancient Greek.
I find it a bit odd that we might have an argument now that there may be too much computer science in education, because I don't see any of it. Let me maybe personally say why I see computer science as actually, I don't see it just as, I actually personally find computer science fascinating because it's at the same time an engineering discipline and a science and an art. And it actually can be used to transport a lot of educational content. It's an art because it's creating software is actually a creative process. It's making choices. And it's an engineering discipline, of course, because it's building something, and it's in some sense the engineering discipline that's the freest from physical constraints, and therefore, again, the engineering discipline that's actually easiest to teach and that should be most appealing to the broadest section of people. And it's also, as Carlo mentioned, it's also a science with very fundamental concepts about information, about complexity. I mean, even about science, you could make the argument that computer science, like math, is the only real universal science. I mean, in biology, you investigate this particular world we live in, even in physics to a large degree. In computer science is independent of this particular, it has much more degrees of freedom, many more degrees of freedom, and therefore also to build many more exciting, much more exciting educational contents in every possible direction. I'm completely with you. I don't want to create narrow, coding nerds. Yeah. Yeah, but coding is a part of it. It's often misunderstood that, well, coding, let's leave aside, let's teach something like media, understanding, and word processing, and so on, and that completely misses.
Yeah, I want to pick up on this issue of computer science as being a whole science on its own, and thanks for these examples that have presented that computer science is everything, and computers are not just everywhere, but everything tends to become a computer already now. And I wish to extend on those examples a bit. When we remember in 1999, when the human DNA was sequenced, I guess it was not possible without the data management and the algorithms that were behind it, so that we could have a clear view of the human DNA. Yet it is a contribution of medical research. And the Higgs boson at CERN would not have been found with the supercomputer behind it and the algorithms. Yet it is a physics contribution. Man would not have landed on the moon with a microcontroller programmed, landing concept. Still, this is a contribution of space research. Nobody would have found this room here without the global positioning system, to guide to this lecture room here. Still, this is an achievement of military research. The world stock markets, with all the trading bots there, are an achievement of economic research. We see self-driving cars soon, and they are an achievement of Google. We see then self-aware robots at Rensselaer last year, and solving the King's Wise Men problem, and it's an achievement of robotics research. So we know all this is informatics contributions. All we know is that this is computer science research, but it is not attributed to computer science. Why is this? Should we care?
Is there anyone from the panel who would like to respond?
Yes, we should. I think, that's exactly, what I was saying, as there's a problem of invisibility. The complexity of the things that we create, which make these things possible, is not visible. I mean, it's in the software. And it's very hard to communicate. And so, and I think that we suffer from this. For example, when we talk to politicians, they don't understand, what are you asking? What is, but even, and even sometimes, maybe not here at TU Wien, but even your colleagues, they say, yeah, but you're just helping us, and we are developing the self-driving car. We mechanical engineers, So we have a problem of visibility, and the problem of visibility is affecting us because people don't understand that this science and technology is what drives the whole thing. And you need to continue to invest. For example, in terms of funding, you need to invest for progress in the area. Of course, you also need to invest to innovate in all the other areas, but don't forget, there's research in computer science that still needs to be supported because, the fragility of the systems that I mentioned before will only go away, as if we can find ways, to design things in a way that, they're less error prone. We can prove that, they are free from the problems that, may show up later, and so on and so forth. So, but this invisibility doesn't help us. So we need to be able to convince the people that we, and we have to be proud, we have a role there. And without us, I doubt that progress could be made.
Yes, I agree with many of the arguments in favor of computer science and make it more visible, make it also play a bigger role in education. That's very important. I agree completely. But I'm now going back to the Janus phase. And I want to ask you the question, is this making visible, making people more educated in understanding what computer science does, in the interest of the computer science industry? That's for me the question. Can you answer this question?
Is there anyone from you who would like to?
Of course it is. They're looking for plenty of people that they would like to hire that are not there.
But I also think so if it starts everything with education, and it's a bit also related to the privacy question and mobbing and all this. So if you don't, so just like with any other product, okay, that's we develop in computer science or in other products like cars or when we teach our children what is a well-behaved, how we should well behave, we always teach them the ground principles, okay, what you should do, and then explain the danger. But we cannot just start explaining the danger and then immediately go to omit the ground principle. And then also, so I think in the industry, it's clearly, I think what is important that also we don't have impossible expectation to computer science of building a product that is going to react in all possible scenarios. So in order to teach or also to make industry development more successful, people should be aware of it, that we cannot build one product that is going to be working in all scenarios. And then once we understand this, then we can go to all aspects or all advanced aspects of computer science.
Let me give you a different answer. Right? Another way why it's important in my mind. We much of this irrational fear of computing, of automation, of robots, of ultimately, jobs going away and so on, is based basically on lack of knowledge. For example, if I give you two jobs, the job of a plumber and the job of a trained language translator, which is more at risk to be replaced? You have to know something about computing to know the plumber will not go away. The language translator probably is not a wise investment into the future.
Yeah, also a question to the whole panel. Shouldn't developers, innovators, or scientists in computer science to be forced to also think about the social or ethical problems they may create as they invent new things? For example, the automated car of Google. Now you have an ethical problem in algorithms to decide, do you kill the driver, do you kill the two persons on the left side or the three persons on the right side? Shouldn't they be forced to think about the problems?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Is there anyone who could answer?
Thank you for the question from our student representatives. Yes. In more general terms, I think I was really liked the presentation by Carlo, because what I thought the whole time is what we are missing is a value system. And I don't have now all the rules at hand, but and I like this comparison with the cars. When the cars have been invented 100 years ago, a little bit more, there was also this discussion, isn't it too dangerous, and how will not too many people be killed? And when you look today at the traffic, quite often I ask myself, wow, there are not so many, people know how to behave. They don't by, out of fun, just crash into another car. So we have a value system, I think, established to, a car is to a certain extent a weapon go along with this weapon. And something similar, I think perhaps even more complex, because computer science is more complex than cars, we need a similar value system also for how to go along with these artifacts we built here. And I have no answer now to your specific question, how the algorithm should be decided. Yeah? But there are, I'm pretty sure that we have to develop a set of, say, rules which are now perhaps in the minds of some people, but perhaps in a couple of years, in, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, it's just clear how we have to design our algorithms. Yeah? And I think this is one of the most important, and we have to be involved as a computer scientist, but of course we are not the only, we are not the philosophers, we are not the sociologists who have perhaps more answers than we have. So we have to involve a more interdisciplinary kind of discourse here. We were discussing about ethical boards the last couple of days, but there must be some kind of more brains to think about that. But I'm pretty sure that this is the only way to go. And this is, again, in this enlightenment discussion, I really like the remark by Hans that we really have to kind of re-establish or establish here the way how we go with this very powerful tools we have now in our hands to kind of, make the world not worse. And perhaps one last remark here, this trumping was discussed quite often in the last couple of minutes, but this goes further. When we have, when we take all these fundamentalistic minds we have in our world, I guess there is really a big danger here that we go in this irrational direction furthermore. And I don't want to say that I'm not speaking of saying we shouldn't develop computer science further. No, even more, we should develop computer science further, but for the good and not for the worse. And here, I guess we need, again, this value chain. I'm a business informatics person. So we need a value chain, but not only a business value, but also moral values, how to work with our, with our tool set we have at hand.
Yeah, may I say, I very much agree that computer science and also its education has to make steps in this direction because it has become so important. So if you argue for a better visibility of computer and computer science and technology, as was pointed out by a previous speaker. Personally,
by the Dean of the Faculty of Informatics of the Johannes Kepler University of Linz.
Okay,
we can say it.
I think, by the way, that this was a big problem in the old days, and it's getting less. So I do remember a discussion with my own dean many years ago about the World Wide Web. And he was claiming explicitly that it was a physics contribution. And anyone who knows Tim Berners-Lee only vaguely knows that he has nothing to do with physics whatsoever. And this is slowly changing. But, yes, but on the other hand, the European research has been very beneficial to ICT and computer science. Not so much the national science foundations, also in our case. But I do think if you argue with good reasons for better visibility, then there are also good reasons to be concerned about all kinds of developments, so you have to take them on as well. And that's, I think, the point you are making. And that is something that you cannot, as Carlo said, we cannot delegate that kind of responsibility to or this is an ethical issue, leave it to the philosophers, or this is a social issue, leave it to the social scientists. This is also something that must be taken on by computer scientists in collaboration with others, and that will also redefine what computer science is.
Okay, I have a question to Tom Hensinger. So you mentioned earlier that there are irrational fears related to computer science, which might be true in general, but isn't it true that artificial intelligence is set to surpass human intelligence in a few years, or at least, in the near future?
Well, personally, I would file that under the chapter of irrational fears. I mean, again, and I think actually to make an argument here, and a well-founded argument, it requires a discourse that requires a basic understanding of computer science. I mean, not taking any way away from artificial intelligence, and today artificial intelligence is basically used as another word for a particular model of computation called neural networks, right? That's a technology that's particularly good at certain things and not good at other things. It's, for example, it's spectacularly good at recognizing faces, which one would think is a difficult task, but it's also spectacularly good at playing Go, right? But just as traditional previous model of computation was spectacularly good, a more traditional computer science deterministic machine model was spectacularly good at playing chess, right? Again, to even have this discourse, I think it's very important that there is, again, in the general population, a much greater degree of understanding of what computers could possibly do and what they possibly cannot do.
Okay, I have a question, or rather a statement, maybe. So I would like to come back to the education at schools, what Mr. Hensinger was talking about. So I think even if we would integrate computer science as a subject in schools beginning next school year, starting at grade 5, I'm quite skeptical that we would have the right teachers for that. So what I think is that even if we would integrate computer science, we would not have the teachers to teach the kind of computer science you were talking about. Yeah, and here. Yeah.
I agree, if if we just take that, we'll never change anything.
I would, you should look at what they did in the UK. There's this computing in schools. Mm-hmm. They created a way through voluntary, people going into schools, preparing the material, training people. Eventually you will need teachers, right? But it will take too long if you wait. And so there is a lightweight approach, which is very much based on voluntary work. Mm-hmm. Okay? But if you look, there's material online, it's fascinating. And it seems to work. And then now and then you train people, and then people train other people. They prepare material, they share material, and it's so this growing body of knowledge is kept and reused so that people can easily be trained to do this.
I believe that this system would work, but I also see every day. I'm a computer science teacher in Austria, here in Vienna, that this probably does not work everywhere. So I see that if you take a teacher with a quick computer science education into a classroom, you probably end up having teachers teaching some Microsoft products, for example.
That's not what they're doing.
Yeah. So the next point is I would like to point out is that maybe in UK, I'm not quite informed about that, the universities are more in cooperation with the school authorities like that. This is what I miss here in Vienna as well. I mean, you can say that schools need to teach computer science as university, but then, for example, the TU Wien doesn't offer teacher certification for computer science teachers. And I don't see that much activities in computer science education research in general, like classroom research, offering teachers and authorities materials, research, and so on. So I think that would also be the responsibility of the universities to integrate in this topic to move towards computer science at schools. So, or what do you think?
Thanks a lot for the remark. Since we are running out of time, I would like to collect some last questions from the audience and then have a final round here from the panel speakers.
My problem with computer now is that we always have the idea that we can cover every problem with computers. That we have a system, and within the system we can cover all problems. But mostly the problems we have, we don't think when we program something, we don't think of all problems which might happen. And for example, if we have a car which drives by itself, we think of many problems. But there's always one problem we don't have covered, and this problem then comes, and what we do now when this problem comes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Hi. I very much like this introductory slide which showed that computer science permeates everything. However, I think there are two items on this list where I personally believe it's not that far yet. So, I would like to ask maybe the question beforehand, before I explain that is, so what is the reason for that? So the first is, I think in education, there's basically nowadays, there's practically, in general, no use of computer science. And I don't mean, unlike the previous discussion here, I don't mean education in computer science, or not computer science courses, but using computer science to teach other things. It's in school, it's very rarely used. And the other thing is medicine. And although we have seen tremendous advances in medicine, if you go to a hospital, and my wife is a medical doctor, and her experience is that while there might be in pharmaceutical corporations and so on, there's certainly a lot of use of computer science actually in the hospital. The only parts where computer science is being used actually hinders doctors from performing well. She said when in the hospital, all these patient management systems and so on were introduced, everything got incredibly more complicated, and she now has much less time to spend with the patients than before, and there is actually not a lot of use is being made of the data that is collected, and there might be cases where this is being used, but she reports that it's not being used that much, and it actually takes away a lot of time that you can that you could otherwise spend with the patient. So, what is the reason that in these two cases, education and medicine, it's not used as much or used actually maybe to a detrimental way.
Thank you. And I think we had one last question in the back. Yeah, we will collect all the questions, if you don't mind, for the last round, if that's okay.
So I'm relatively young, and I've been told in order to get well educated, 40 years ago you had to go to school and get a good education, or you have to go to library. So it was very hard to get your information. Now we have like something much stronger than this. We have the internet. So we have every kind of information. We want 5 minutes away from when the question appears. So my question to you is like, what do we want for future? Do we want to keep informatics in the boundaries of school, or if we want that, how do we do that? Like, I think it's not that easy.
Thank you. So coming to an end, I would like to ask the panel speakers for last concluding remarks, addressing the questions we had now at last. And also I would like to ask you what you take home from this discussion today, and do you have any suggestions for actions that should be undertaken in order to develop computer science further? Please, Carlo, do you want to?
No, I just wanted to make a comment on the medical question, which also links to the possible tremendous social impact that informatics can have. If you think of underdeveloped countries, for example, I know a person who is working in medical systems that are used in Africa, in areas where you provide technology that is affordable there for distance medical consulting. So you have people, living far away from doctors, and there's technology that allows you to be diagnosed, with imaged, cheap ways of transmitting images and collaborating remotely with doctors. This is a tremendous type of impact that you can have on society. And more generally, I believe that one of the values of our technology is that it can help reduce the divide in societies. So societies where, for example, building certain infrastructures would be too late. Now, with the new developments, for example, of the technology that has been developed by computer science, they can catch up. I just give you an example. If you go to China now, you almost in no place you pay with paper money, but you pay with electronic money. And I was surprised to see, you see the carts in Beijing going around, and they sell baked potatoes. I mean, so a very poor guy going around with a bike, and I even took a picture, because someone buying these potatoes, and the guy has his phone. You have your phone. They use WeChat, which is their application, and then there's a QR code that you don't pay, so the guy gets paid, and this has made, for example, is making possible in these countries to be able also to have traces of economic transactions that are going on that otherwise would be completely hidden. So, for example, you can introduce fair taxation because everything becomes transparent. This is something that is going on there. It's not going on here. I believe that one of the values of and again this brings to the two faces. This is a very positive value. You make, for example, medical systems available in remote areas, one example. Payment systems and making the taxes and whatever, transparent in societies, where there was more corruption, for example. These are fantastic uses. I'll stop here.
Thank you. May I ask you, Gerti Kappel, for your concluding remarks?
And there were a couple of questions concerning education and medicine. I think this is not the fault of the computer science that it is used in a wrong way. No? Today in medicine, on one hand they are doing incredible stuff when you're working in this area with all visualization and the operation, and as in this high-tech medicine, I think great. But in the business informatics-oriented medicine, as all the processes, this is really a pity what's going on nowadays. Yeah? It's mainly used for documentation, but for accounting, for in fact proving that somebody hasn't made a remark in some document or has done it. So here is really perhaps the whole, we as process engineers together with the people who are kind of working at the managerial level in the medical environment, there is still a lot to be done. I totally agree. But this is not alone the fault of, I don't see here too much the fault in our educational and university system. Concerning education, why don't the physicists, the geographists, the whatever use computers and software for simulation, for animation and so on? Again, schools are very, very hierarchical, very, we have heard today, baroque institution, at least in Austria. And it is, to a certain extent, quite difficult to really get this as mainstream, that they use the tools at hand to show and to teach to a certain extent, perhaps it's also fear of the teachers that they might do something wrong and then they are kind of in front of their classroom and the system is not working. So there must be perhaps more technical support also to this respect. Of course, also to a certain extent, more money for the schools to kind of get them in the shape to provide this to teachers. Concerning the mistake, the failure you develop in your program, and then the self-driving car makes a mistake. This is a question of coverage. I think when we develop our algorithms, we all know that we have to ask ourselves, test coverage, to which extent can we prove validation and verification? We have Tom Hensinger here at the panel. So here there must be even more solutions coming from computer science, but they are more also developed. One thing is that we are developing kind of, with software, kind of, I would say, universal systems, which are perhaps used also in a wrong way. Yeah? They are not only used for the car A, but then they're also used for the car B. For the car B, here doesn't work, second we get a problem. But this is something we also have to, at least as a computer scientist, we can develop here more and more. We will never be at the end, but we can develop more solutions. And last but not least was what you have learned, I think you said 40 years ago, and what you have to learn now. What we really, Carlo was mentioning, we have to teach this computational thinking or algorithmic thinking. What does it mean, informatization? Yeah, this has nothing to do with a computer or hardware in the first place. It has something to do how we think about problems, and this is something we can teach in schools, yeah? And of course we have to teach the teacher, but I really like also this volunteering idea, what is going on in Great Britain. I think we have to take the responsibility here. And there was also, I think Tom has brought this up, if universities should be also responsible for kind of, starting in kindergarten already to further develop, or to spread the idea. I mean, university, we can't do everything. And I remember we have a lot of discussions here at the university. Should we go to schools? Should we go to kindergarten? Should we go to the, citizens out there and teach the public? And I know you have something similar I have learned from Hans that they have citizen learning.
Community service learning.
Community service learning. So they go out and teach the community.
But you do that with the refugees.
Exactly what we have done for the refugees. I mean, there should be also kind of, at least it should be shown that the university is taking responsibility. And of course, we can't do everything, but we should use our brains also to show that there is some rational responsibility behind it.
Thank you very much, Hans Ackermanns. Yeah. What do you take home from the discussion?
Yeah, I first want to react on the remark on the non-predictability of the impact if you make a piece of information or communication technology. I think that is very much correct. I also think that it's very much unavoidable. So we have to address the consequences. Basically, computer science matters because it's no longer about a computer, but it's basically about large-scale socio-technical systems that are out there and expand and change and so on and so on. And we simply do not have a good understanding yet how that works. So in that sense, I would say computer science has become a total misnomer for what we do in this science. The subject matter of computer science is no longer the computer. It's a much broader socio-technical system. And it has become inherent to our science. And that is precisely the Janus-faced kind of thing that we have to address. Then I would like to make a remark related to this medical example, but it could be expanded. Clearly, introducing information and communication technology was a very old-fashioned idea that it is automation. And you had that in industry in the 80s, that you think you introduce a computer, then it does certain things for you, but the rest stays the same. This is totally wrong. So you have to rethink and redesign the whole process of humans, non-humans, where they can help, what you do not want to change. And that is true for the whole medical profession. And all these things are very much contextual, and I want to come. I work actually in Africa, so the same kind of things you try to do in Africa, because the context is so totally different, you have to really rethink what you can do and what you should not do. But the whole thing is that we have to redesign and rethink all these processes, including this whole value chain thing. Okay,
Thank you. Laura Kovac, may I ask you for some concluding remarks, please?
I think much has been said, and I will only reflect on this comment or this question from the audience that was that when you use a computer, that your problem is that you think you solve all your problems, and then yet another problem shows up that the computer cannot solve. And this is somehow from a human perspective is accepted, although we know that there is no such computer that's going to solve all our problems. So then when we go to autonomous systems, then we have all these fears, and there are all these controversial questions. Okay, what happens when this scenario shows up? And I mean, these are very good and catchy headlines, but the same question can be asked: so what, as a human, what will you do? And there are so many exceptions, and we know we cannot cover all exceptions. Autonomous system will happen. I mean, they are already there, and they will become much more and more powerful. And actually, I mean, these autonomous systems are engineered, and also computer scientists play a significant role in it. So how they behave on some specific rule-based. And sometimes I believe that sometimes the behavior of an autonomous system can be much better understood than the behavior of a human being, because a human being will just make exceptions out of the sudden, whereas a well-programmed or well-designed autonomous system will be very rule-based, will have a very rule-based behavior. So I think it's really like, we should really accept that there will be no correct by design software that is going to, or product that is going to solve all our problems. And just like we accept human behavior, we should live with that. Yeah, software, or like, software sciences also have errors if you don't understand all the consequences. That even if we think we understand all consequences, we are humans, so we are going to miss one of the consequences.
Thank you. Final statement from you, Thomas Hensinger, please.
Yeah, to get back about these questions about self-driving cars and these Janus-faced perspective from, frankly, of any new technology. Any new technology offers opportunities and offers dangers. I mean, take the airbag in cars. I mean, in certain individual situations, an airbag may kill. Whether there's a baby on the seat, or the driver suddenly not seeing something that could wreck. But it's clear that in vastly more cases, an airbag saves lives. When we talk about other technology like self-driving cars, and I owe this example to Edward Lee here in the audience, is why is it the first thing we talk about? Who takes the decision, whether the person on the left or the person on the right is killed? Why aren't we actually talking about when a madman drives into a crowd of people, as it happened in Graz, that car makers are not obliged to put technology into their cars that could actually prevent that today? And with that, there's one more thing I wanted to say, because it's actually one of the facts that astonished me most when I heard about it just a few months ago, that at Stanford University, now computer science is the most popular major among women. This is where we need to get to. Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful final statement. So thank you very much for your interest and your lively discussion, also your participation and your questions. Thanks a lot to all of the panel speakers. Some of the things that I have learned today is that we might never do away with the two-faced role of computer science, and also that there is a lot that can be done from kindergarten on, but also in the universities of today, and also that this is indeed a topic that can be discussed for very many hours longer. Thanks a lot for taking the time, also to the organizers and the invitation. And with that, I would like to hand over to Professor.
So now you will hear the 1 hour concluding remarks. And I will start with a very detailed repeating what you have told us. What we forgot to tell at the beginning is that this panel discussion is because we had a meeting with our international advisory board, and you see 2 members of the advisory board. The third one is Edward Lee up there, and we had 2 further ones who had already to leave. And where we as a faculty are reviewing our plans and our, let's say, what is the strategic direction we should move to. So this is the reason we did this, and we took the occasion that they are here and also invited others to participate in this discussion. Because one of the issues was exactly our relationship to this development and how to treat this development. One thing I have learned in this discussion is this nearly permanent dichotomy. These 2 words, these 2 faces. We have what Tom has said, we are working in the abstract. We can do everything. We are not limited by physical limits. But at the same time, we change the physical world. So this is somehow what we are doing. What you have explained, the abstract and the concrete, or the science and the technology, or the artifacts we are producing. One of those distinctions was somehow missing is, and it was unspokenly accepted, that the focus of a university is research and teaching, okay? And research has to be free. There should be no limits to research. And when you take it very seriously, this social aspect where we have to reflect on the impact, then we have a normative feature, okay? What we have normally as engineers, we have it because as an engineer we build something for a specific focus, to solve a very specific problem, okay? If we go to natural science, this is completely different, okay? In natural science we have this hypothesis and we should not be limited by any, let's say, in an idealistic world, let's say an idealistic world, we should not be limited. So this is also this distinction. There's somehow this relationship between free science but taking also a social responsibility. This is something, I think this is a dialectic process. This is a learn from you, that it's not a one day shot, but this is a dialectic process within a university and as a society as a whole. And I think you can have this dialectic distinction you can solve when you go up to a higher level and see a university not only as a research and a teaching institution, but also as a cultural institution, contributing to a culture and understanding of a total society. With this, I want to thank you all for participating, the panelists, the audience, and I think there's a buffet. We invite you to participate in our buffet. This is not a distinction between things. I hope it's good, the buffet, okay? Thank you.